Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Auda, the founder and CEO of Three Beats Consulting, and I am so thrilled to have Dr. Sarah Swan here today of Sea and Snow Holistic Wellness. I met Sarah because she presented at a networking group that I'm a part of for this Women's Leadership Collective. And her presentation was so applicable, so simple, so practical. We left with so many amazing little tidbits, stories, tips, and ways that, as my meditation teacher would say, it's like the 2% of intention that affects the other 98% of life. And I just feel like, Sarah and I just fell in love immediately as friends. And it's been such a joy to be able to get to know her better on this journey. And one of the things I love about Sarah is how accessible and simple she makes accessing our health and wellness. So, Sarah, I am so grateful, Dr. Swan, so grateful to have you here. Thank you for
Hey,
joining us today.
absolutely. I'm so happy to be here and chat with you and hopefully other people in the future about health and wellness.
Yes. So, is there anything you want to share that would be helpful for us to know, right? Because you're a behavioral specialist, right?
Yes. So
So,
I'm
can
a
you
doctor.
share a little bit? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm a doctor of behavioral health. This means I focus with people on patterns and habits and why we do certain things a little bit separate from the psychological aspect. So it's a little different. However, it is really about the future and how we can do things to improve our wellness and our health as we move forward.
And what got you interested? Just before we get into this new question, I feel like that context is so important.
Yeah.
And one of the things, because I know that this is a personal thing for you, right? But one of the things that I have just been really struck by in your content and in what you share. So for anyone who's going to follow Dr. Swan after this, you have so many personal anecdotes and stories and like sharing your own personal habits and hangups. And I
Mhm.
think it's so valuable for people to be like, my doctor is talking about something I just dealt with last night versus, right,
Yeah,
like this big concept they can't relate to. So, could you share a little bit about how you got here?
absolutely. So I started from the clinical side of things. I got my undergrad and my master's and my doctorate all in the clinical world. And with that, there was a lot of moments where I noticed general population or just like the everyday person needed a little bit more focus, a little bit more care that wasn't necessarily being talked about. So when it comes to the word holistic, it's not just looking at, okay, what does my blood work say? But it talks more so about how do I feel about this thing? What is my body responding to, either positively or negatively? And so with all of that, I came to want to open my own business, Sea and Snow Holistic Wellness. And so I work one-on-one with people where we can really dive into what's actually going on. What are the current struggles you're dealing with rather than something more generic and generalized. It's very specific to that person. And to me, I think it's so important to share what I'm doing and what I'm struggling with because I'm not perfect and life is hard. And so when we're all just supporting each other and know like, okay, one thing at a time, one step at a time, like I'm working to better myself every day, to be happy, to be healthy. And I think we all want to be happy and healthy.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're all trying to solve for, I think,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, right? Well, this is so timely, I think, for so many people, right, who are having so many conversations about wellness and functional health and the GLP-1 culture and right, so many different parts to this. There's so many things. I'm so interested to hear where you take the conversation today, but the first question for every guest is, what do people need to know right now?
There's lots of things that I think we could know, but I think the biggest barrier to what's been going on just in health and wellness in general is that it takes time. There's this myth that goes around that a new habit takes 2 weeks or 3 weeks to create. But in reality, it takes anywhere from 18 days to 254 days, basically about 2.5 months. And the way our biological system and our neurons and how we like talk to our brains and all this different stuff, it goes from a conscious choice of like, okay, I'm going to do this very specific thing to an automatic routine. And so that transfer and that neuroplasticity that has to happen in order to create a behavior to make it more of that automatic takes time. And so when we try to fix things or do things that potentially is a little bit more involved, it can be super difficult because it takes that effort and it takes not only 1 week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but about 3 months or even 6 months before our cells are like, oh, okay, this is the new baseline. This is who we are now.
Oh my gosh, that's and what a relief, I think. Culturally, I don't think we like that answer, right? Because we
Absolutely.
want that the immediate, results, and we want the immediate, right, satisfaction of
Mhm.
seeing, right, the efforts put into play, which is just such a hard thing that Western culture deals with, right? It's just such an immediacy culture. Um,
Absolutely.
but I appreciate what you're sharing about like it takes time. And even right on the health piece, we can see that, right?
Mhm.
Um, our bodies are showing what we've eaten how many days ago, right? So it does have a way of catching up, right? And even in business, what I see, and part of why I work with people who are a little farther along in their businesses is the exact same reason, right? Their consciousness level is in a different place a year into the business, 5 years into the business, 10 years into the business, right? So that time piece, oh man, and I'm an impatient person. So I can personally relate to that too. Well, what is in the way, right? Especially in your unique niche and in what you're seeing in your clients and in
Mhm.
your consultations with people, what are some of the biggest things that are in the way of people knowing what you just shared and implementing that?
Yeah, I think that instant gratification is definitely something that gets in the way. Our biology and that immediate survival that we crave, whether it's subconscious or not, or conscious, um, typical modern health goals require that delayed gratification. What happens in 3 months from now? And that mismatch creates friction because we want something to happen immediately or very quickly. And so this subconscious, the 60% of our body and brain that is at the autopilot, creates those daily actions, those subconscious habit loops like, okay, I'm going to get my coffee in the morning, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to go on my phone. And that habit, we think we're making those conscious decisions throughout the whole day, but really our brain is wired to conserve that energy. And so it relies on things that we're already doing and that script that's already in there. So that immediate gratification and changing our environmental triggers and the things that are giving us that desire for change. It's not just this willpower. It's not a character trait. It's the environment. How can we make it filled with these cues that trigger necessarily old habits, but these new ones, and stacking them upon each other so that our willpower um, doesn't necessarily give up or change, even if something is difficult or comes in the way and causes that barrier.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I think you probably see this. I know that you've shared about this some on your socials and your content that's out there on
Mhm.
Substack and Instagram and LinkedIn. But the perfectionism, right? Of
Mhm.
like, oh my gosh, I ate so good for 7 days. And then on day eight, I just like totally went off the rails. I
Yeah,
feel like you have such permission for people to be like, all good. Sometimes we need days like that. Let's get back on. That's
yeah.
all good, right? There's none of that like shame or perfectionism, right? That's being demanded.
Yeah. I mean, we're all a work in progress. I'm currently working with someone who has a lot of food restrictions based on just how they are and their current health status. And so it becomes really difficult not only to like get creative, but things that are actually enjoyable and tasteful. And so tapping a little bit into that intuitive eating aspect of like, what does my body want? How do I feel before and after I eat it? It gives us this idea to treat food as play rather than something that's like super strict because you don't know until you try and based on how you feel afterwards. And every once in a while you just want a piece of cake or you want a cookie, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of life. That's part of the joy and the part of food that's so much fun. And so when we can treat it a little bit more like play instead of this like black and white aspect, it becomes a lot easier and gives yourself that permission to explore, which I feel like a lot of us don't do anymore.
I love that. That actually it reminds me of two things. One is I love trash TV. Like I love reality TV, mostly the 90 Days,
Uh-huh.
Fiance series. And there are some people on there who are, fitness junkies and they're counting their macros and they're like, it's like steamed spinach and, steamed broccoli or whatever it is, right? And it's like so specific and maybe even bland at times, but it's like food is fuel. And that's what it's used for, which is kind of a different extreme, right? And so this
Yeah.
invitation of like food is play. And I mean, I have a daughter who's about to turn 9, but has always had some stuff around food.
Mhm.
And to make it playful, like let's try broccoli blended, let's try broccoli broiled, let's try broccoli dipped in this, let's try,
Mhm.
all these different ways to try the same thing has
Yeah,
invited me into a different level of creativity when it comes to food and recipes and those sorts of things, which has been fun and like a thing that kind of has bonded us together too. Well,
absolutely.
and one of the things that I love and admire so much about you, Dr. Swan, is that you are in corporate settings talking about this. You're in
Mhm.
personal, private, sessions with clients talking about this. Right? You've pulled collectives together. You have so much content, right, around this. And to your point, right, it's a process and a journey. You don't just go to the gym once and see results. There has to be some sort of consistency to that. So the
Exactly.
last question, which I think you're going to touch on, is how can people who are watching this start to implement some of the wisdom, some of the practices, maybe even some specific habits you might recommend? How can
Absolutely.
someone who feels that little ping of inspiration
Mhm.
start to implement some of these things you've spoken about?
I think the biggest and sometimes scariest is to just choose one behavior at a time. When we're like, okay, I'm gonna get healthy, I'm gonna sleep 8 hours, I'm gonna eat all this nutrient dense food, I'm gonna do all of these things, it gets very overwhelming and our brain can't fully process that. And then we get burnt out. And so, to make sure we don't get burnt out and it's a continuous transformation, one thing at a time. So, specifically, I am working on drinking more water. And so after in the morning, I drink my coffee. And then right after, I have a full 8 ounces or 16 ounces of water. And this is I don't know if the word necessarily, but it's called habit stacking. And
Mm,
and in the book of Atomic Habits, it talks a lot about habit stacking and what that is. So it's choosing a habit that you already have, something you're already doing every day, and then piggybacking off of that to do something new. So, okay, I always make coffee in the morning. What's something I can do right after that's going to be more positive for what I'm working towards? So, I'm working towards drinking more water. So, I use something and then piggyback off of that to continue on with these changes. And so, whether it's drinking water, whether it's moving your body more, whether it's focusing on eating different kinds of foods, one small thing at a time. Try it out for 3 months, see how it is, and then add something new to it afterwards.
that is so simple and so clear because all of us have habits. Like
Mhm.
we're all doing things every day. Are we
Yeah,
aware of those things, right? And those
exactly.
anchors, right, to piggyback. I've not heard of that idea actually. And I read
Okay.
Atomic Habits, a long time ago, but that's a good reminder to maybe revisit that idea. Yeah.
Have someone I'm working with right now who is focusing a lot on like stability and making sure that they have like all those small little muscles strong for them.
Mm.
So what we came up with together was when they're brushing their teeth to stand on one foot for 1 minute and then to stand on one foot for the other minute. So it's almost like multitasking, but it's a very intentional, okay, I'm going to do this at this time of the day.
That seems a lot simpler than how an extremist like me usually takes things where it's, those reels you see on Instagram where like the red light mask and you're on the elliptical and you're doing emails.
Yeah,
Like that is
yeah,
definitely,
exactly.
I'm guilty of that sometimes. Well, Dr. Swan, how can people get to have more access to you, your content? You do speaking, you do retreats, you do facilitation, you do private work. How can
Yes.
people find out more about this and more about you? And we'll add it in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So you're welcome to call me. You can text me. You can email me. My website is csnowholistic.com. My email is drsarah@csnowholistic.com. I have a Instagram for the business, which is csnowholistic.com, but my personal Instagram, Dr. Sarah Swan, that's where I post all my information. So
Okay.
whether that's ideas, whether that's what I'm working towards, just different thoughts and feelings. So Instagram, LinkedIn, and Substack are my bigger platforms that I've been using. I will say Substack is more about the eating side of things, following intuitive eating, what that means, how we can heal our relationship with food. My LinkedIn is definitely more towards the business side of things, like how we can implement like top down from different businesses so that we can incorporate more wellness. And then my Instagram is really just me and what I've been up to. But please, I'd love to chat, whether that's, about micro habits and things like that, or if it's anything, from I want to run a marathon to I was just diagnosed with this chronic illness. I don't know what that means. So it's kind of fun that I get the whole variety, but that's part of what makes behavioral health so awesome. It's different for everyone and it's different every day, which is great.
Which, I mean, that's going to be the best thing, for anyone is to get that customized attention and care, right? In how they're habit stacking, right? And how they have accountability for that. So, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your expertise. You are so approachable and so exceptional, right, at what you do. And I've had the honor to be able to be a recipient of that. And so, I'm so glad you gave yourself this opportunity to come here and be a part of this. And I hope that for those that are listening, that there's some sort of resonance and valuable takeaway from this. So, again, you'll be able to see all of Sarah's contact and links in the show notes. So, reach out, ask your questions. She will be thrilled to be able to support you with that. So,
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Sarah. I appreciate it. Okay.
Bye, everyone.